Jesus never taught what the church says he taught, and I can prove it. Rudolf Steiner spent decades investigating the Akashic records, and what he discovered about the original teachings of Christ completely destroys the official narrative. The first 3 centuries of Christianity were a silent war, a war to control what you can and cannot know about Jesus, and the church won that war until now. Today, I'm going to reveal the 5 central teachings of Jesus that were systematically removed. I'm going to show you exactly when this happened, who did it, and why. And in the end, I'm going to teach you the method that Steiner rediscovered, for you to connect directly with the cosmic Christ, without intermediaries, without the church, without anyone's permission. If you've ever felt that something is missing from the Christian message, if you've ever looked at what the churches teach and thought, this doesn't make sense. If you've ever suspected that the spiritual truth has been hidden from you, this video will confirm what your soul already knows. Let's start with the first censored teaching. And this is the most important of all. Jesus taught that the kingdom of God is within you, not in heaven, not in another dimension, not in a place you go after you die, within you, now, in this moment. In the Gospel of Thomas, a version that was found in Nag Hammadi in 1945, Jesus said clearly, "The kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. When you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will understand that you are the children of the living Father." Do you understand what he's saying? Knowing yourself is the way, not believing in dogmas, not following rituals, not obeying religious authorities. Self-knowledge, that's what Jesus taught. But this gospel was declared heretical. Why? Because if the kingdom is within you, you don't need the church to find it. You don't need a priest. You don't need confession. You don't need intermediaries. And without intermediaries, there is no power, no control, no money. The early church faced a choice: teach what Jesus really said and lose control, or modify the message and create a powerful institution. They chose power. Rudolf Steiner was very specific about this. He said that in the early centuries, there were 2 currents of Christianity. The exoteric current, which was for the masses, simplified, based on blind faith and obedience, and the esoteric current, which preserved the real teachings, transmitted only to initiates. The esoteric current included Gnostics, Hermeticists, early Christian mystics. They knew that Jesus was a master of spiritual initiation, that his teachings were practical methods for expanding consciousness, that the parables contained codes for the awakening of the soul. But the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD changed everything. And here's what no one tells you about this council. Emperor Constantine was not a Christian when he convened the council. He was a politician. His empire was fragmented. He needed a unified religion to maintain control. Christianity had potential, but there were dozens of different versions, dozens of gospels circulating, dozens of interpretations. Constantine wanted one version, one doctrine, one authority. So he gathered bishops from across the empire and said, "Decide what is truth." And the bishops decided, not based on what Jesus taught, based on what was politically convenient. Steiner investigated this moment through the Akashic records. He described how Ahrimanic, spiritual presences, influenced the decisions. Ahriman, in Steiner's terminology, represents the cosmic force that wants to trap humanity in the material world, separated from the spiritual. And at that council, that force acted intensely. The result? Trichotomy was abolished. What is trichotomy? It's the original view that the human being is composed of body, soul, and spirit. 3 distinct parts, the spirit being the eternal, divine part that connects you directly with God. But after Nicaea, and especially after the Council of Constantinople in 869, the Church declared that the human being has only body and soul. The spirit was eliminated. Why does this matter? Because if you don't have a spirit, you can't connect directly with God. You need the church as an intermediary. Do you see the manipulation? They removed the part of you that connects you with the divine, and then offered themselves as the only possible bridge. This wasn't an accident. It was strategy. The second censored teaching is even more explosive. Jesus taught reincarnation. I know this sounds shocking. The church has always denied reincarnation, but the early Christians believed in it. Origen, one of the greatest theologians of the early centuries, wrote extensively about the pre-existence of souls. He believed that souls exist before birth and go through multiple lives to evolve spiritually. In the Gospel of John, when Jesus sees the man born blind, the disciples ask, "Master, who sinned that he was born blind? He or his parents?" Think about that question. How can someone sin before they are born? It only makes sense if the disciples believed in past lives. And Jesus doesn't correct that belief. He doesn't say that reincarnation is a lie. He simply responds about another aspect. Steiner was very clear. He said that the doctrine of reincarnation was known in the inner circles of early Christianity, but it was removed because it created a problem for the church. What problem? If you have multiple lives to evolve, the urgency diminishes. You don't need to be saved now. You don't need the church desperately. You can trust in the process of soul development through incarnations. But if you have a single life, and then eternal judgment, the fear increases, the dependence on the church increases, the control increases. So reincarnation was declared heresy at the Second Council of Constantinople in 553. Origen's works were burned. Hundreds of years of teachings were erased. And here's something that will disturb you. The vote that condemned reincarnation was manipulated. Pope Vigilius refused to participate in the council. He disagreed with the decisions, but Emperor Justinian forced the condemnations anyway. It was a political decision, not a spiritual one. And it wasn't just reincarnation. Entire texts were destroyed, libraries burned. Entire communities of Gnostic Christians were exterminated because they preserved the original teachings. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria, the persecution of the Cathars in southern France, the Inquisition against the Templars, all these events are connected. They were attempts to erase the knowledge that Jesus really transmitted. Steiner said that in every generation, courageous souls tried to preserve the truth. They hid texts in caves, like the Nag Hammadi manuscripts found in 1945. They passed down teachings orally, from master to disciple. They created symbols and codes that only the initiated could decipher. The truth was never completely destroyed, only buried, waiting for the right moment to resurface. And that moment is now. You are living in a time when censored truth is returning, not by accident, but by evolutionary necessity. Humanity needs this knowledge to take the next step. The third censored teaching is about the nature of the Christ. The Church teaches that Jesus was God from birth, that he was divine from the very first moment. But Rudolf Steiner revealed something different. He showed that Jesus of Nazareth was a highly evolved human being, a spiritual master, but the cosmic Christ, the divine force, only united with him at the baptism in the Jordan. This moment is described in the Gospels. Jesus is 30 years old. John the Baptist baptizes him in the Jordan River. The Holy Spirit descends like a dove. A voice from heaven says, "This is my beloved Son." And for Rudolf Steiner, this was the moment of fusion, the cosmic Christ, a solar entity of unimaginable dimensions, united with the body of Jesus. The 3 years of ministry that followed were the Christ operating through Jesus. It was a collaboration between the human and the divine. Why was this censored? Because it implies something revolutionary. If the Christ is a cosmic force that can unite with a prepared human being, then others can go through the same process. Christification is not exclusive to Jesus. It's a human potential. But wait, if this is true, the church loses its monopoly on Christ. Anyone who develops spiritually can become a vehicle for the cosmic Christ. And that is unacceptable. But for an institution that wants to be the sole mediator between humans and God, the fourth censored teaching is about practical methods of spiritual development. Jesus didn't just preach, he taught techniques, specific methods, to expand consciousness, to develop spiritual perception, to awaken latent capacities in the human soul. In the canonical Gospels, only fragments remain. When Jesus says, the eye is the lamp of the body," when he speaks about seeing and hearing spiritually, when he teaches about prayer in the secret chamber, all these are remnants of a complete system of spiritual practices. Rudolf Steiner recovered these practices through esoteric investigation. He described the 6 basic exercises that form the foundation of spiritual development: control of thought, control of will, equanimity, positivity, openness, harmony. These exercises are not Rudolf Steiner's invention. He stated that they are versions of the methods that Jesus transmitted to the disciples in the inner circle, methods that were suppressed because they gave power to the individual. Think about it. If Jesus taught techniques for you to develop clairvoyance yourself, for you to access spiritual worlds yourself, for you to connect with the divine yourself, why would you need a church? Why would you need sacraments administered by priests? Why would you need permission? The church transformed Christianity from a path of initiation into a religion of obedience, from a method of awakening into a system of control, from an inner journey into an outer institution. And there is still one additional teaching that was completely erased: the role of the sacred feminine. Jesus treated women in a revolutionary way for his time. Mary Magdalene was one of his most advanced disciples. The Gospel of Philip, found in Nag Hammadi, says that Jesus kissed her frequently and loved her more than the other disciples. Peter complained, asked why Jesus favored her, but this was not a romantic relationship in the common sense. It was a relationship of spiritual transmission. Mary Magdalene had developed capacities that the other disciples had not yet. She represented the feminine principle of wisdom, Sophia, the divine counterpart of the masculine logos. The church suppressed the sacred feminine because it threatened the patriarchal structure of power. Mary Magdalene was slandered as a prostitute by Pope Gregory in 591 AD, a lie that lasted 1,400 years, until 1969, when the Vatican finally admitted that there was no basis for this accusation. But the damage was done. The sacred feminine was removed from Christianity, and with it, half of the original teaching of Jesus. The fifth censored teaching is perhaps the most important for us today. Jesus taught that the Christ would return, but not in the way the church says. The second coming is not a physical event in the sky. It's not Jesus descending on the cloud to judge the living and the dead. It's an ethereal event. Rudolf Steiner was very specific. He said that from the 20th century onwards, the Christ would begin to appear on the etheric plane, not visible to physical eyes, but perceptible to those who have developed spiritual vision. He called this the second coming in the etheric. This means that the Christ is already returning, not in the distant future. Now, at this moment, people around the world are having experiences of the etheric Christ, visions, intuitions, spiritual encounters. But most don't recognize it, because they were taught to expect something different. The church needs you to wait. Waiting keeps you dependent. Waiting keeps you obedient. If you knew that the Christ is already accessible. Now, at this moment, through the development of your own consciousness, you wouldn't need the church anymore. And that is exactly why this teaching was hidden. Now let me tell you how Rudolf Steiner discovered all of this, because this completely changes the credibility of the information. Rudolf Steiner did not base his claims on speculation. He wasn't interpreting ancient texts creatively. He accessed the Akashic records directly. What are the Akashic records? It's a kind of cosmic memory, where everything that has ever happened is preserved. Every thought, every action, every event in human history. Rudolf Steiner developed the ability to read these records through decades of rigorous spiritual practice. And when he investigated the early centuries of Christianity, he wasn't reading about the past. He was observing the past directly. He saw the secret meetings of the Gnostics, saw the debates in the early councils, saw the systematic destruction of texts, saw the real motivations behind the theological decisions, and saw what Jesus really taught before the layers of distortion were added. This explains why Rudolf Steiner's revelations are so detailed, why they fill gaps that historians can't explain, why they make sense in a way that the official explanations don't. And Rudolf Steiner paid a high price for revealing these truths. The Goetheanum, the center Rudolf Steiner built in Dornach, Switzerland for anthroposophy. It was tragically set ablaze on New Year's Eve in 1922. Steiner himself, while giving a lecture, watched his architectural masterpiece, a building crafted entirely of hand-carved wood, consumed by flames. He never fully recovered from that blow. He passed away in 1925, just 3 short years later. Some claim it was an accident, a random event. Others point to forces, dark forces, that vehemently opposed the spread of his teachings. Steiner himself acknowledged spiritual opposition to his work. Forces that preferred humanity remain shrouded in ignorance, but he left behind a treasure trove, hundreds of lectures, thousands of pages of profound texts, a school of training, and practical methods that anyone can use. He knew his voice could not be permanently silenced. Truth, ultimately, always finds a way. But here's the crucial question you need to ask yourself. If the original teachings of Jesus Christ were censored, suppressed, how can you access them today? How can you reclaim what has been lost? Rudolf Steiner didn't just expose what was hidden. He taught us how to reconnect. And that's precisely what I'm going to share with you now. A practical method, a step-by-step guide to directly accessing the cosmic Christ. First, you need to understand something fundamental, something crucial. The Christ is not some distant historical figure. The Christ is a living cosmic force, a spiritual presence that has permeated the entire earth since Golgotha. When the blood of Jesus touched the ground at the moment of crucifixion, the cosmic Christ merged with the etheric body of the planet. He is literally everywhere. He's within you, all around you, waiting to be recognized. Connecting with the Christ doesn't require intermediaries. It doesn't require special rituals or fancy ceremonies. It doesn't require permission from any religious authority. It only requires 3 things: quieting the astral body, descending into the spiritual heart, and acknowledging the Christ presence. Let me explain each step in detail. Quieting the astral body is the first challenge. Your astral body is the seat of your emotions, your desires, your fears, your hopes. It's constantly agitated, constantly reacting to the world around you. This agitation creates a kind of fog, a spiritual smog, that blocks spiritual perception. To quiet the astral body, you need to become an observer of your own thoughts and emotions, not to repress them, not to judge them, but simply to observe. When a thought arises, you simply notice it. When an emotion appears, you acknowledge it. You don't identify with them. You become the conscious awareness that witnesses them. This is what the mystics called hesychia, what the Sufis called fana, what the Buddhists called sunyata. The early Christians knew this practice, but it was deliberately removed from public teaching. Why? Because a Christian who can quiet their mind doesn't need intermediaries to find God. The second step is descending into the spiritual heart, not the physical heart, of course, but the energetic center in the chest that mystics of all traditions have recognized. The Desert Fathers called it the deep heart. Rudolf Steiner referred to it as the 12-petaled lotus. To descend into the heart, you use the breath as an anchor. Inhale, counting to 4. Hold, counting to 4. Exhale, counting to 4. Hold, counting to 4. This quaternary pattern, this fourfold rhythm, synchronizes your four bodies: physical, etheric, astral, and the I, your higher self. As you breathe, you direct your attention to the center of your chest. Don't think about the heart. Feel the heart. Become present in the heart. And it's there, in that silence, that the connection happens. The third step is recognition. You don't ask the Christ. You don't beg. You don't plead. You recognize. There's a huge difference. Asking implies separation. It implies that the Christ is far away and you need to attract his attention. But recognizing implies presence. It implies that the Christ is already here, already within you, already available. You just need to perceive it. The phrase that Rudolf Steiner suggested was, "I and the Father are one," or "the Christ lives in me," not as a mechanical repetition, but as a declaration of truth, as an acknowledgement of what is already real. When you combine these three steps, something extraordinary happens. The astral fog dissipates, the spiritual heart opens. The Christ presence becomes perceptible, not necessarily as a dramatic vision, but as warmth in the chest, as profound peace, as an inexplicable certainty, as a sensation of being accompanied. Some people cry the first time they achieve this, not from sadness, but from recognition, as if they were returning home after a journey that was way too long. And here's what you need to understand about this process. It doesn't happen overnight. It requires daily practice. It requires patience. It requires persistence. Rudolf Steiner said that the etheric body takes about 40 days to form new patterns. So the first 40 days are the most difficult, and also the most important. In the first few days, you probably won't feel anything special. Your astral body will resist. Your mind will churn out incessant thoughts. You will doubt whether it's working. This is normal. This is expected. Keep going anyway. Around the 7th day, something begins to shift. The thoughts diminish a little. The silence becomes more accessible. The heart begins to respond. Around the 21st day, if you've practiced diligently, you'll notice more significant changes, more vivid dreams, clearer intuitions, more frequent synchronicities, a subtle sense of guidance. And around the 40th day, the new pattern solidifies. Access to the spiritual heart becomes more natural. The Christ presence becomes more familiar. You begin to live differently, not because you're trying to, but because something within you has changed. Each video like this requires hours of studying Rudolf Steiner's archives, comparing lectures, cross-referencing ideas, translating anthroposophical concepts into accessible language. The super thanks down there isn't just financial support. It's you saying that this kind of knowledge needs to continue, that the truth the church censored deserves to be shared, that you are part of those who seek the real Christ, not the institutionalized version. Now, let me talk about the signs that the process is working, because many people give up too soon. Give up before they see the results. Give up because they don't know what to look for. The first sign is a change in the quality of your dreams. Dreams that are more colorful, more meaningful. Dreams with luminous figures. Dreams with teachings. Dreams that seem more real than waking life. This indicates that your astral body is purifying, that the connection with the spiritual world is strengthening. The second sign is synchronicities, meaningful coincidences. You think of someone and the person calls. You need information and it appears. You ask an inner question and the answer arises unexpectedly. That indicates you're beginning to operate in harmony with the spiritual plane. The third sign is a feeling of peace, a peace that isn't dependent on circumstances. It's not that the problems magically disappear. It's that your relationship with the problem shifts. You're able to maintain a calm center, even amidst total chaos. This indicates that the cosmic Christ is beginning to operate through your higher self. The fourth sign is a change in how you perceive people. You start to see beyond the masks, beyond the personas. You perceive the soul of people, what they really are behind the appearances. This can be disconcerting at first, but it's a sign that your spiritual perception is awakening. The fifth sign is the most subtle and the most important. You start to know things, not because someone told you, not because you read it somewhere. You simply know. Intuitions that prove true, comprehensions that arise from nowhere, knowledge that seems to come from within. This indicates that the higher self is becoming active, that the connection with cosmic Christ wisdom is being established. Now, I need to talk about the obstacles, because the path isn't linear, and there are forces that would prefer you not awaken. Rudolf Steiner described two cosmic forces that work against human evolution, Lucifer and Ahriman. Not demons in the religious sense, real cosmic forces with specific functions. Lucifer tries to lead you astray through an excess of spirituality, dramatic experiences, spectacular visions, feelings of spiritual superiority. If you start feeling special, enlightened, better than others, watch out. Lucifer is acting. True spiritual development produces humility, not pride. Ahriman tries to lead you astray through materialism and skepticism, constant doubts, a desire for proof, denial of the spiritual. If you start thinking that all this is nonsense, that there is no spiritual world, that you're wasting your time, watch out. Ahriman is acting. The path of the cosmic Christ is the middle path, between Luciferian fantasy and Ahrimanic denial. Sober presence, gradual development, real transformation without spectacle. And this is where most people fail. They want quick results. They want dramatic experiences. They want immediate proof. But spiritual development doesn't work like that. It's an organic process, like a plant growing. You can't accelerate it by pulling the plant upwards. You can only create the conditions and allow growth to happen. The early Christians knew this. They had patience and they had discipline. They had communities that supported mutual development. The modern church has lost all of that. It's transformed Christianity into spiritual consumption. Do this and earn that, believe this and go to heaven. Instantaneity, superficiality. But you don't need the modern church to find the cosmic Christ. In fact, the modern church can be an obstacle because it teaches you to look in the wrong place. Outside instead of inside, in the future instead of now, in the institution instead of in your own soul. Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." But what truth? The truth of the church, the truth of dogmas, the truth of political councils like the Council of Nicaea. No, the truth of your own being, the truth that the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. The truth that the cosmic Christ lives in your soul, the truth that you are a child of the living Father. That truth was censored, but it can't be destroyed because it's inscribed in your own essence. The church can burn books, it can declare heresies, it can persecute Christian mystics, but it can't erase what you are. And here's something that Rudolf Steiner revealed about the purpose of this censorship. It wasn't just a grab for power, it was a distorted evolutionary necessity. Humanity needed to go through a period of materialization. It needed to descend deeply into matter to develop logical thought, science, technology. If the original spiritual teachings of Jesus had remained intact, perhaps humanity wouldn't have developed these capabilities. But that period is ending. The descent is complete. Now it's time to ascend again, to reintegrate the spiritual with the material, to recover what was lost. Rudolf Steiner called this the task of our time, to find the cosmic Christ again. Not the cosmic Christ of the institutionalized church, the real cosmic Christ, the force of love and wisdom that permeates all of existence. And that task can't be done by the church. It has to be done by individuals, by you, by each person who decides to seek the truth for themselves. So you. What are you going to do with this information? You can ignore it. Continue with your comfortable religion. Wait for the second coming that will never happen in the way you've been taught. Live and die without ever discovering what Jesus really taught. Or you can investigate, practice the methods, develop your own connection. Discover for yourself if Rudolf Steiner was right. Don't accept it because I said so. Verify it through your own experience. Rudolf Steiner always emphasized this. I don't want blind followers, he said. I want independent investigators. Don't accept what I say because I said it. Test it. Verify it. Develop your own perception. Anthroposophy isn't a religion. It's a path of knowledge, a method for expanding consciousness, an invitation to become a researcher of the spiritual. And here's what makes this historical moment unique. Never before in human history has it been so easy to access these teachings. Before, you would have needed to be accepted into a mystery school, spend years in training, prove your dedication. Now the knowledge is available to anyone who seeks it. Rudolf Steiner democratized the spiritual path. He broke the monopoly of the secret schools. He said that anyone with sincerity and dedication can develop spiritual perception. You don't need to be special. You don't need to have innate gifts. You just need will and persistence. This is what the church has always feared. Not that you know the truth, but that you discover that you can access the divine directly. That you don't need intermediaries. That spiritual power is your birthright. If Jesus came back today, would he recognize what the church teaches in his name? Comment down below, yes or no, and explain your answer. I want to know what you think. And if this video opened something up in you. If it confirmed suspicions that you already had. If it gave you hope that there's something beyond what you've been taught, leave a like. It helps more than you imagine. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Because this is just the beginning. There's much more censored truth to reveal. Remember, the truth that was hidden for 2,000 years can no longer be suppressed. The veil is being lifted, and you are part of this awakening, not by accident, by choice of your soul before you were born. You've arrived precisely at this moment in history. You are destined to be a guardian of truth. You're here to be a beacon of light in the darkness. It's your time. So until the next video, stay vigilant, stay true, and remember, you are not alone. The universe is guiding you. Trust the process. Let's keep shining that light and spreading the truth.